It started like a movie: love, promises, and a new beginning. But on a quiet night in Medellín, Colombia, that same love turned into blood. A suitcase, a mother's scream, and a son's confession. Everything revealed how thin the line between love and obsession really is. This is the story of Isabella Mesa Sánchez, a young woman who only wanted love but found death instead. Was it really love, or a dangerous obsession that destroyed everything? Medellín, Colombia. January 28, 2024. The police receive a call about a crime in a private home. A woman on the line can barely speak. Her son has confessed to committing a crime. When investigators arrive at the scene, they find a suitcase. Inside, it is the body of 19-year-old Isabella Mesa Sánchez. Just a few days earlier, she had celebrated her birthday. This story began like a romance but ended in blood and in questions that have no answers. Where does love end and obsession begin? The story that evolved into this crime in Medellín has deep roots reaching back into the past. To understand the tragedy, one must know the people bound together in this chain of events: mothers, sons, and daughters, and a person whose emotions turned into a weapon. Isabella Mesa Sánchez was born in January 2005 in Medellín, Colombia. She grew up without a father under the care of her grandmother, while her mother Sandra Mesa worked in Mexico, trying to earn a future for her daughter. Isabella early showed independence and a desire for a glamorous life. She dreamed of a modeling career and began building it right after moving to her mother's town of León in the state of Guanajuato. Agencies readily took her on, as her open smile and confidence made her stand out among the others. At 16, Isabella learned she was pregnant. The father of her son was her boyfriend, with whom her relationship was calm and mature for their age. Her mother supported her daughter and helped her cope with her new role. The child, a boy named Maximiliano, was born healthy. Isabella combined taking care of her son with her modeling work and planned a future in which she could give him everything she herself had not had. After separating from the father of her son, she kept good relations with him for the sake of their son. Sandra Mesa all this time continued working, remaining for her daughter a model of endurance. She often warned Isabella about people who could ruin lives while hiding behind love. However, as the tragedy would show, Sandra would remember her words too late. As a result, she would become guardian to Maximiliano, who lost his mother at age 2. Sebastián Villegas, the future perpetrator of the crime, was born and raised in Medellín. His parents were religious people who spent much time in church. From early on, Sebastián was noted for his introversion and a troubling jealousy. After finishing school, he entered military service. In the army, he showed discipline, but his fellow soldiers noted his quick temper and his urge to control others. The paths of these people would cross years later. Isabella, who had come from Mexico on vacation, would meet Sebastián again, an acquaintance from her teenage years. Neither of them anticipated that this meeting would mark the start of the events that led to the tragedy in Medellín in January 2024. Each of these lives appeared ordinary until they collided with another. Everything that followed was not an accident, but the outcome of a chain of decisions, each mistake bringing the catastrophe closer. In mid-2023, Isabella Mesa Sánchez traveled to Colombia with her son and her mother. It was their annual trip, a tradition of visiting family and old friends in Medellín. Isabella had been living in Mexico for nearly 3 years by then. She had grown used to the stability, the rhythm of life, and a sense of control that came with her work and home life. Coming back to Colombia felt like a short vacation, a break, a chance to reconnect with loved ones. While in Medellín, Isabella ran into Sebastián Villegas, someone she had known since childhood. He was 2 years older and used to hang around near her school back in the day. Back then, she hadn't paid much attention to him, but years later, that changed. By now, Sebastián was serving in the Colombian military and came across as confident, composed, and mature. Their reconnection wasn't planned. He found her through mutual friends and reached out on social media. Their first conversations were friendly. They made plans to meet in person, and right from the start, Sebastian came on strong. He asked questions about her life in Mexico, her son, her job. Isabella, who had become used to focusing entirely on her son and career, was flattered by the attention. Before long, they started dating. The relationship felt like a natural part of her growing up, calm but emotional, grounded in mutual attraction and interest. But even early on, Sebastian began showing signs of wanting control. He asked who she spent time with, where she went, and who messaged her. Isabella took it as a sign that he cared. She didn't recognize the warning signs. She hadn't planned for anything serious. Her plan was to return to Mexico. But Sebastian saw things differently. To him, their reunion turned into something more, something obsessive. As her trip came to an end, Sebastian began pressuring her to stay in Colombia. Isabella said no. Her life was in Mexico, where her son, her job, and her mother were. Sebastian didn't take it well. He began making remarks, saying he couldn't handle the thought of her going back to another country where other men look at her. Before leaving, Isabella promised they'd stay in touch. Sebastian suggested daily video calls, and she agreed, thinking it was just another way of showing affection. But from that point on, their relationship spiraled into a cycle of control and hidden hostility. The trip that had started as a peaceful family visit would turn out to be the starting point of a sequence of events leading to a tragic end. At the time, she had no way of knowing that what seemed like a harmless reunion would become something much darker. Back in Mexico, Isabella continued communicating with Sebastian. They messaged, called, and video chatted daily. At first, it all seemed normal, sharing updates, talking about plans, staying emotionally close across the distance. But things started to shift. Sebastian became demanding. He insisted Isabella be available at all times. Any delay in response triggered jealousy and accusations of neglect. He began asking for proof of loyalty, wanting to see her phone screen, commenting on the photo she posted online, questioning who she was talking to. Slowly, it turned into a system of control. Isabella told herself it was just love, just someone struggling with the distance. She even reassured her mother, Sandra, that Sebastian just needed time to adjust. But the red flags kept growing. Sebastian started interfering in her everyday life, suggesting she delete contacts, cut ties with friends, especially colleagues from her modeling work. Any mention of her son's father sparked angry reactions. He couldn't accept that she maintained a respectful co-parenting relationship. Every time she tried to explain, it ended in guilt trips and manipulation. Sandra noticed her daughter changing. Isabella became anxious, always had her phone in hand, and avoided any conversation about Sebastian. Her friends saw it too. They watched her pull away, but couldn't convince her to leave the relationship. Isabella still believed the jealousy meant deep feelings, and that everything would be fine once they saw each other again. By the end of 2023, the pressure from Sebastian had reached a breaking point. He started threatening self-harm if Isabella ever left him, warning that he couldn't live knowing she might be with someone else. At times, his threats grew even darker. He talked about hurting anyone who got close to her. Those words frightened Isabella, yet she still tried to calm him, believing it all came from overwhelming emotions. By then, Sebastian had taken full control of her communication. He decided who she could talk to, where she could be, even what she could wear. Any deviation set off an angry outburst, and Isabella found herself making excuses for every little thing she did. Without realizing it, she lost the ability to see the line between his so-called care and the suppression of her freedom. Late in December, Sebastian insisted that virtual communication was no longer enough. He demanded that she return to Colombia, claiming it was the only way to save their relationship. Exhausted by the constant conflict, Isabella agreed to visit for a short time. At this point, their relationship was no longer a romance. It had become dependency. Sebastian turned her trust into a tool of control. Every step she took depended on his approval. This was no longer love. It was the beginning of destruction, one that would soon turn into a direct threat to her life. In early January 2024, Isabella Mesa Sánchez told her mother that she planned to go back to Colombia. She explained it simply. She wanted to see Sebastian and spend time with him before her 19th birthday. Sandra Mesa reacted with concern. She said later that her daughter looked tired but convinced the trip would help figure things out. Sandra tried to talk her out of it, reminding her of the jealousy and pressure Sebastian constantly showed, but Isabella insisted everything would be fine. She chose to travel alone, leaving her son Maximiliano with her mother. She said she needed to see first whether living together with Sebastian could work. He had already arranged for short-term leave from the military, preparing to stay by her side every moment she was in Medellín. For him, her arrival was a chance to reinforce his control and prove she belonged only to him. On January 25th, Isabella arrived in Colombia, where Sebastian met her at the airport. The first photos later found on her phone showed them smiling together. But despite the outward happiness, their messages from that same day revealed that Sebastian was already monitoring her, demanding she report where she was and who she talked to. Isabella kept her replies short, trying to avoid arguments. Over the next few days, they were almost never apart. Sebastian went with her to see friends and relatives, all while closely watching her behavior. Witnesses recalled that he reacted with irritation whenever anyone spoke to her, especially men. Even conversations with her girlfriends made him suspicious. Isabella tried to hide the tension, but those close to her noticed she avoided being alone. Sebastian refused to let her go anywhere without him. He insisted it was for her safety, but in reality, he was controlling her every move. Every night, he checked her phone and messages. Isabella tried not to spark conflict, but deep inside, she felt her independence slipping away. Despite the warning signs, she kept trying to make everything look normal. She told relatives everything was fine and that Sebastian was just worried about her. In reality, she was already living in constant stress. She planned to cut the trip short, but she never got the chance. By the time she arrived, Sebastian had taken complete control of the situation. He arranged every meetup, managed her schedule, and even dictated where she stayed. Isabella had only been in the city for a few days, but that was enough for him to isolate her from everyone else. What started as an attempt at reconciliation turned into a period of non-stop pressure where even a single word could trigger aggressive behavior. This trip was supposed to be a brief test of their relationship. Instead, it became her last. On the night of January 28th, Isabella Mesa Sánchez celebrated her 19th birthday. Friends had put together a small get-together outside the city, a private home with music, a simple outdoor setup, and light snacks. To everyone else, it was just a regular birthday party, but for Isabella, it was a rare chance to reconnect with old friends. She appeared calm, doing her best not to show how exhausted she'd become over the past days. Sebastian Villegas came with her, and from the start, he acted tense. Witnesses later said he barely spoke and hardly smiled. When Isabella chatted with friends, he stood right beside her, watching closely. Several guests remembered him saying he wanted to leave early, blaming it on being tired. Isabella tried to ignore it and keep the celebration upbeat. Late into the night, everything changed. Someone suggested taking a group photo, and when Isabella stood next to a longtime friend, Sebastian reacted suddenly. He walked over, grabbed her by the hand, and demanded they leave. People noticed the tension immediately. Isabella tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip. Witnesses said she loudly told him to let her go, and the music briefly stopped. A few friends tried to step in, offering to drive her home, but she refused, saying she could handle it. Then the two of them left together. It was close to midnight. No one at the party would ever see Isabella alive again. Investigators would later discover that by that moment, Sebastian was already in a deeply unstable emotional state. Just hours before the party, he had messaged a friend complaining that he couldn't control the situation and that Isabella wasn't listening to him. Those messages would become a key piece of evidence, showing clear intention behind what followed. After Isabella and Sebastian left the gathering, her friends tried to reach her, but her phone was off. One of them texted her the next morning, but it was never read. Her mother, still in Mexico, later said she also tried calling that night, but the connection kept cutting out. From that moment, all traces of Isabella vanish. The last time anyone saw her was the evening of January 28th at a party outside the city where she was smiling, chatting with friends. Just hours later, her name would appear in police reports under tragic circumstances. After leaving the party, Isabella Mesa Sánchez and Sebastian Vilgas headed to his parents' house. The drive took around 30 minutes. According to investigators, an argument broke out between them along the way. Phone records show that around midnight, Isabella tried to call a friend, but the call lasted just a few seconds before it was disconnected. That was the last activity recorded from her phone. Neighbors reported hearing raised voices coming from the Vagos home at approximately 12:45 a.m. Minutes later, the noise stopped. At that time, Sebastian's parents weren't home. They were attending a late-night church service. When they returned, they found their son in the living room mopping the floor. His mother noticed he was wearing the same clothes he had worn the day before, but they appeared damp. His behavior struck them as unusual. Sebastian rarely helped with housework, but that night he was obsessively cleaning and avoided conversation. When asked where Isabella was, he said they had argued and she left. His parents didn't press for more details, but noticed a strong scent of cleaning chemicals in the house and one window left wide open even though it was chilly outside. Later, his mother noticed a suitcase in the corner of the room. She didn't ask questions at first, but soon after, Sebastian walked into the kitchen and said quietly, "I messed everything up." When she asked what happened, he calmly said that he had taken Isabella's life. Then he walked out of the house. His parents didn't believe him until they checked the room and saw blood. It was true. Around 7 a.m., they contacted the military unit where their son served and told them about his confession. His commanding officers urged them to contact law enforcement immediately. By 8 a.m., officers had arrived at the home. During the search, they found the suitcase mentioned by his mother. When opened, it confirmed the worst. Inside was the body of Isabella Mesa Sánchez. Forensic experts recorded 24 stab wounds, several of them consistent with defensive injuries, signs that she tried to fight back. The weapon, a kitchen knife, was later found in a trash bin behind a neighboring house. Police immediately named Sebastian Village as the prime suspect. His parents gave full statements and admitted it was they who made the anonymous call that led officers to the scene. For them, it was a decision they couldn't avoid. They knew the truth couldn't be hidden. That night marked a dividing line between the life Isabella had been building for herself and her son and the one that ended in a house where a new chapter was supposed to begin. After the discovery of her body, the investigation quickly focused on a primary suspect, Sebastian Villas. The house contained critical evidence, traces of blood, the knife, and fibers matching Isabella's clothing. Police released a wanted bulletin and launched a full search operation. On the morning of January 29th, Sebastian turned himself in at the military base where he served. He told his commanders that he had taken Isabella's life and said he was ready to face consequences. He was detained on the spot and transferred to civilian law enforcement. During questioning, he showed no regret. He spoke calmly and claimed he had lost control. According to investigators, he didn't try to escape right after the crime. He only left the house to think about what to do next. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Sandra Mesa received the devastating news about her daughter. Relatives were the ones who informed her, and she immediately flew to Colombia. Upon arriving in Medellín, Sandra attended the official identification of the body. In a statement to the press, she said she demanded justice and would not allow her daughter's death to go unpunished. The case quickly sparked widespread public attention. Colombian media covered every step of the investigation. There were discussions about aggressive behavior in relationships and the silence of those who had seen the warning signs but did nothing. The story spread across social networks where thousands expressed support for Isabella's family and condemned Vales's actions. On January 29th, a court issued an arrest warrant against him, accusing him of committing a crime under aggravating circumstances. He was placed in pre-trial detention. The first days in custody passed without incident until February 3rd, when something unexpected happened. During a routine outdoor break, Sebastian asked to use the restroom. The guards followed standard procedure and allowed him to go. A few minutes later, it became clear that he was trying to escape through a window in the restroom. The escape attempt was stopped quickly. He was caught right there, after which his confinement conditions were tightened and a new charge was added: attempted escape from custody. This incident became further proof that he felt no remorse and was willing to break the law even after being detained. After news of the escape attempt was released, public attention intensified. Women's rights organizations demanded tougher measures for suspects involved in aggressive acts toward women. The name Isabella Mesa Sánchez became a symbol of another high-profile case of gender-motivated crime, and her mother became the face of a campaign pushing for harsher penalties in such cases. The trial of Sebastian Valles began at the end of January and quickly gained major public attention. At the first hearing, the accused denied guilt, claiming he didn't remember the moment of the crime. Prosecutors presented evidence, forensic reports, witness statements from the party, and records of messages where he threatened Isabella. Everything pointed to intent and planning. Under the weight of the evidence, the defense offered a deal to prosecutors. Valle agreed to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. At the final hearing, the court found him responsible for committing a crime driven by gender-based aggression. Sebastian Valles was sentenced to 31 years and 3 months in prison, with no chance of early release, no reduced time for good behavior, and no option for house arrest. The sentence took effect on May 9, 2024. Isabella's mother, Sandra Mesa, thanked the court and the public for their support. She said she would continue working to ensure that her daughter's story becomes a warning for others who may be facing abusive relationships. After the sentencing, Sandra spoke openly to the media for the first time about her personal grief. She shared how she had spent months watching her daughter struggle under intense pressure, but could not convince her to end the relationship. Her emotional statement, broadcast by major TV networks, was seen as a call to all parents who have lost their sons or daughters because of aggressive behavior. When the trial concluded, Sandra was formally granted guardianship of her grandson, Maximiliano. In one interview, she said that her only goal now is to protect him and raise him in a world where love is not something to fear. The tragic story of the Mesa family stands as a reminder that silence and inaction can be just as destructive as the hands of the criminal himself. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can be the first to hear about such real-life stories.